Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing well and not too overly stressed. Here in Los Angeles, our shelter-in-place orders just came through to be extended till May 15th. It's a weird and exciting time that we're living in. That's really all I can say. This year is 2020, which is a year of critical success. So far, I know it feels more like critical failure, but we're gonna get through this and everything's gonna be okay. I was originally going to talk about World of Warcraft and using it to teach the economy and such, but rather than talk about economics today, I want to talk about opportunity. You see, when you roll a natural 20 in Pathfinder, you need to roll again to get a second natural 20 to back up your first one. And when you do that successfully, you have what is called a critical success, which means it's uncontested and something epic happens. The collective we, humanity, have an uncontested opportunity for critical success. Under the current shelter-in-place conditions, it may seem like we don't, but we have so many opportunities to become better than we were, whether through acts of kindness, acts of charity, acts of education, acts of family. We can emerge from this fight successful. World of Warcraft is one of the best known massively multiplayer online role-playing games, or MMORPGs. It was released November 23rd, 2004, and it has been used as a tool for training and learning in several different industries pretty much ever since. Dr. Nick Yee of Quantic Foundry spent his doctoral career at Stanford University researching the importance of World of Warcraft to understanding motivational theory, personality, leadership, all of those things. I've cited his work numerous times in my own dissertation research. His dissertation was called Gaming the Quantified Self, and it deals with taking on a persona in the safety of the game world that might not be the same type of personality that you have. For example, a person who may have difficulty standing up in front of people and leading a meeting would take on a role where they have to be the confident leader of a team or of a guild or something like that. And playing that character continually helps to transfer the confidence that they have with that character into themselves so that they can be more confident when standing in front of people leading a meeting. So that it's kind of an overly simplistic explanation of his research, but the point is it's the safety of the online world that helps MMOs be as successful as training tools as they are. In February of 2019, the BBC ran a story from a Norwegian journalist who had interviewed a family of a guy. His name was Mats, I believe. He had a rare form of muscular dystrophy and died from complications of that disease in November of 2014. What his family didn't know was that he was a really important person in a guild called Starlight in World of Warcraft, to the extent that a lot of his guildmates flew to Norway to be there for his funeral. His father only had the regret that he never tried to understand the game that his son was playing. They felt like he was missing out on a lot because he couldn't walk, he couldn't run, he couldn't swim, he couldn't go outside, all of these other things. But he would always just play online, and they thought he was just kind of wasting whatever time he had left. But in fact, he was building relationships and building community in a virtual place. When the game came out in 2004, that was when Mats first started playing, and he played it right up until he died in November of 2014, which means Mats was playing during another very important event that happened in World of Warcraft. And that was the Corrupted Blood pandemic in 2005. Why was that so important, I hear you ask? Well, I shall tell you. It was an incident that occurred within the game that's still discussed in, I'm gonna try to say this word, epidemiology. I think that's how it's said, epidemiology, that's still discussed in epidemiology today. In a 2019 article in the Berkeley Scientific Journal, Girish discusses the rise of computational epidemiology. I don't know. I have trouble with some words. I can say them great in my head, and then I try to say them out loud in there's no connection. Anyway, computational epidemiology notes the lack of ability of programs to use that one unpredictable variable, and that is the human nature. Enter MMOs. So what started out as a coding error on behalf of the Blizzard development team ended up being the catalyst for epidemiologists to study and learn how to predict how pandemics start and spread. Because World of Warcraft is, I know this isn't the right term, it's not technically an open world, but it is a persistent world. It's open in the fact that you can go wherever you want within the world, and it's persistent, meaning that even when you log off, that world is continuing to go. So researchers now finally had a way to study the spread of the disease that also incorporated the human unpredictable variable. The corrupted blood plague, it affected animals, specifically the players' virtual pets, as well as the players, as well as non-playing characters or NPCs. And one of the problems was the NPCs can't die. So they have this disease and they're spreading it to literally everybody who comes up to talk to them. To quote Girish, an analysis of the virtual epidemic also revealed puzzling, often inexplicable human behavioral tendencies. And Girish goes on to state that some of the players who had healing characters would rush to the disease epicenters to heal infected players and revive dead ones at the risk of getting infected themselves, which is quite noble. And we see that kind of today with all of the doctors and nurses working on the front lines trying to help the COVID-19 people. Except in the case of the game, the seeming benevolent action contributed to the spread of the epidemic because the characters whose death would have killed the infection brought it back with them when they were resurrected. And then, of course, they were able to continue to spread the disease. The people who were being healed were still able to spread the disease because the healing didn't take away the corrupted blood aspect. It just kept you alive longer. And then the healers themselves were getting infected by the people that they were trying to help. Girish also notes that during the initial phases of the epidemic, players were the first ones, followed eventually by Blizzard itself, to set up quarantine zones for characters to wait out the infection. Naturally, there were a lot of players who simply refused to comply with quarantine. Girish posited that it may have been partly due to curiosity and cited Dr. Nina Pfefferman, who was the advisor to Eric Logren, who was the first student epidemiologist to start studying the corrupted blood phenomenon, or pandemic, whatever you'd like to call it, in 2005. Anyway, Dr. Nina Pfefferman said, there were talks of instances in which players who had logged out upon hearing news of the outbreak logged back in just to see what was going on, while some tried to sneak a peek into the infected cities. Both types of players were infected immediately. So much of what scientists were able to predict about recent pandemics such as SARS or the avian flu is a direct result of studying the corrupted blood pandemic from 2005 in World of Warcraft. We learned that human behavior would range from the nobly well-intentioned to the bafflingly hostile. And we can see that even now the actions of our fellow humans during the COVID-19 pandemic seem to mirror those two extremes as well. Even though I don't personally play World of Warcraft much anymore, it still holds a really special place in my heart. The Horde will always be my home, probably the Undercity. For those of you who play World of Warcraft, you know what I mean. But it's important to play to escape the world in which we live, but it's also important to play to learn how to cope with the world in which we live. If your child is playing computer games, take an interest in those games. Learn to play them. Play with your child. Maybe both of you can learn something new. Maybe you'll learn how to handle a pandemic just because of an accident of coding. I hope that you found this video interesting, and if you would like more information about how to use World of Warcraft or Minecraft or any other video game for that matter to train personal skills, feel free to contact me at chris@plus5initiative.com or visit my website at www.plus5initiative.com. Tune in next time, and we may actually talk about learning the economy through a game called City of Heroes, my favorite MMO.